Welcome to the Jeremy Mullins podcast, where we take a deep dive into different educational topics to help you optimize your life. I am Jeremy, your host. I am here with my co host of the Jeremy Mullins podcast, Mr. Reno.
What's going on?
And we got the memo. We both got the matching hats on today.
Right.
I like it.
Yeah, I need to wear my Team Alpha gear. It's still in the truck. I've been too lazy to pull everything out.
Man, yeah, this was not the first form apparel, but this is a nice hoodie.
Yeah.
And this is the one that hopefully when it comes in for our walk run ruck finals, listen to me, finishers hoodies. This is the apparel it's on. So I'm like super excited for that to come in from that aspect. So speaking of rucking and running and training in general, I just want to give a shout out to one of the sponsors of the podcast that provides the Well Edition E43 Pure Recovery Cream. Oh, we going too? Is that travel size?
Yeah, 1.7 ounces.
Yeah, because mine looks no, mine's 1.7, but it looks bigger on camera.
Oh, yeah, that is weird.
Oh, okay. Um, so I forget going back to drill this past weekend. A lot of times now, like I don't even think about my bicep, right? But when you only see people every few months, and they're like, "Hey, how's your arm?" and I'm like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Oh, And I was showing someone the scar the other day, and that is probably the one thing that really surprised me about using this day in and day out and using more, right? Because remember we talk about this for just recovery of muscle, recovery of joints, like a small amount goes a long way, right? But then, Lee was like, "Hey, Jeremy, with the surgeries, like use it quite a bit, right? So it's not just one squirt. I mean, I would put this just basically one line right over top of the scar, and man, the scar it looks flipping awesome. Like you can hardly tell that A, I have a scar, and B, like the tattoo that it's in doesn't even look messed up,
Not at
right?
all.
So and I have nothing but good things to say about this, and as I go back to it, like I think everybody should have a bottle of this and use it as needed, right? So when you get that, I don't talk about just a little soreness from your training, but maybe you miss a couple of weeks of legs and you hit a big leg session. That's when you could use it, a little bit on your quads, on your hamstrings, to kind of make it through, recover a little bit quicker. But then anytime there's joint pain, something like that, or an injury, hands down, use it consistently until that injury is healed, until that joint feels better. So
Yeah, I went through a little bit of perineal tendonitis after doing our the run ruck walk challenge, and between this and a little bit of stretching, after 4 weeks of pain, I started with this and some PT stuff, and it was like 6 days
yeah.
and gone.
Yeah. So, I mean, awesome stuff. Once again, that is our goal. We'll never bring on a sponsor and if we don't use their service, apparel, gear, objects, vehicles. Hint, hint. GMC, Chevrolet. If you're out there, I'd be okay with Ford Bronco too.
My wife loves her Broncos, so yeah.
Yeah. So we we can adapt. I mean,
Give me
I got a
a Mini
Subaru too.
Cooper. I'll take a Mini Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, we're fine with that. So, any car companies out there looking to sponsor a podcast, I wouldn't care to slap a JM sticker on my Ford Bronco and ride around with the top off.
That's right. Yeah.
But hey, I want to discuss tracking nutrition. I posted the other day, and it was one of the short clips that you prepped for us, where I was telling people that hey, our goal in our education is not that people track 100% of the time, right? That is the goal. I want to educate people. I want to build habits in individuals where they don't have to track. It becomes normal. Like this is my breakfast, right? Like I'm going to eat this breakfast. I'm going to eat this for lunch. I'm going to eat this for dinner, and people don't have to track, right? And then depending on where your downfalls are, like me, I'm a fat kid at heart. My serving sizes get a little big, when I'm not tracking. So sometimes I'll creep back up. I'll get pushing that 220 again. I'm like, okay, Jeremy, you gotta dial this back in, and I'll start tracking again. But there's been a lot of questions, especially with the challenge just starting up. People have been messaging me on tracking, and I thought we'd just do, an episode on it. Like, you know, what what if calories are higher during the week versus the weekend, and some of the questions that we just seem to come up when it comes about tracking.
Yeah, yeah. I was always when I first got into it, I was always confused on, like, what is difference between calorie counting and macro counting, and it's not too different, makes it just simpler is probably my best outside view looking in, but could you give a little bit of insight on really what the differences are?
Yeah, so I think, macros, if we look at just the time of everything, right? So, macros at one point was like if it fits your macros. And that kind of got a negative, review or negative thought process because if it fit your macros, people were just consuming, for lack of better terms, crappy food as long as it fits the macros, right? So that's kind of where that terminology came from. So it became a little bit of a bad reputation. But when you look at okay, tracking calories, our calories are going to come from the foods that we eat, right? So your macros is what makes up your calories. So in sense, if you're tracking one, you can track the other, but a lot of people will just look at calories because once again, it's a simple way, right? They may don't understand proteins, they don't understand carbs, they don't understand fats, so they don't understand the macronutrients. So it's easier to track the calories. Okay. So I think that's the difference between okay, tracking macros and tracking calories. And as we always talk about, I still got the Play-Doh here on the table, you know, your calories will dictate how much Play-Doh you have, right? So I start out with, two things of Play-Doh and, I lose weight because I'm in a calorie deficit. Now I've got one thing of Play-Doh. So I've lost Play-Doh. But how this Play-Doh is going to be shaped is going to be dictated by the calories that we consume within the macros, right? So making sure that you're consuming enough protein to maintain your muscle tissue so that you're losing the body fat, not necessarily the muscle. So a lot of people will start out with calories, right? And then they'll start transitioning over. We like to make it simple, but say, hey, protein and calories, right? Focus on hitting your protein, hitting your calories, not getting too caught up in the carbon fat ratio. So the fuels, not getting too caught up in that. And then as people progress down their journey, they have different goals. Maybe it does become a little bit more important that we do have to fine tune those carbohydrates and those fats. But in the beginning, I am a fan of just tracking protein and tracking calories, and those being the two things you're trying to focus on hitting as far as goal numbers.
You kind of answered the way I was about to give this. So I watched a video back in like 2014 when I first started tracking macros, and the easiest way for me it was like calories is kind of what you're at, and then macros is kind of what your target should be. So like, yeah, you might be consuming say 3,000 calories, but your macros should be around 2,700. So instead of counting calories, I'm just going to hit my macros to where I'm at 2,700 calories instead of 3,000 calories. So it's just easier to track and all that stuff. So, uh,
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, if I go back in the days, right, like when I first started working with people, so I remember my first client. His name's Kevin Hinchen. He's a good friend of mine to now to this day. I had him on a 1,700 to 1,900 calorie diet, and because he was in 230, 240, but he wanted to do 170. So it was 1,700, 1,900 calories, which is probably I look back at it a little bit too low, right? And we just focused on quality of food and the calories. I didn't focus on protein at the time. And I think back and look back at it, and he looked good, he was lean, but we probably would have maintained more muscle tissue in his fat loss journey if I had been focusing on protein at that time, right?
mm,
So there's nothing, like I said, nothing wrong with it. And this is where a lot of times people do get caught up in, emotional attachments to diets and emotional attachments to exercise. Because if you have success doing something and then someone says, no, you need to do it a different way, like you're emotionally attached to that, right? So I want the listeners to understand, like if you just track calories or you're new and you're just tracking calories, that's good. You are becoming more aware of what you need, right? But we can fine tune that a little bit. And once again, start tracking the foods, logging the foods inside of an app, where it will spit out the protein, the carbs, the fats, which will give you your calories. And then you can fine tune those protein and calories.
so we were talking before this, and multiple late nights, especially even like Team Alpha weekend. You're getting back midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., whatever it is. Where do you put those calories after midnight? The day before or the next day
That's a great
before you
question.
go to bed?
Yeah. Um, Me personally, because I don't work any overnight shifts, right? And it's just it's these special occasions, right? Like we talk about this with sleep. Hey, there's gonna be times when you don't get good sleep because of the situation, right? And Team Alpha weekend for us, we know that because it's late nights, it's early mornings. We're taking care of everybody, that type of stuff. I will generally, if it's just a one off, I will track it on the day before, right? So if it's midnight, I'll still count it towards, okay, it's the calories for that day because I'm trying to land stuff for that day. Because if I'm eating that late, then more than likely I'm probably underate, right? And I've got to eat something. So, but on the flip side, I answer this a little different when I'm working with, say, nurses who are working overnights, police, firemen, your first responders, and maybe working 24-hour shifts. Okay. And if they're often working overnights or often working 24-hour shifts, I'll say just do it by the clock. You know what I'm saying? Just do it by your clock. So if it's 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., put that on the next day, right? Because they might be up till 7 a.m. and then they go to bed, they sleep, right? So what's going to happen in there is, it will catch itself up to where it's more of a trend and it being the same over a 24-hour period. And you kind of want to reflect that. Okay. Now, with that being said, what if it's just, maybe two overnights or someone's adjusting from night shift to day shift and you have like a period there that's really weird. Look at the average per week, right? So if someone come to me and say, "Hey, Jeremy, I work this overnight, so you're going to see 1,500 calories and only 150 grams of protein on Tuesday, but on Wednesday, you're going to see 3,500 calories with 300 grams of protein." Right? And it was just because that sleep was kind of in that first day, and then the clock turned over, but they really consumed some of those calories at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. If that makes sense, right? Cool. It averages out for the week, just like if you were tracking it within a 24-hour period or day to day. So, and a lot of people get confused on that in the sense like they just don't know what to do with it. And this is where it always like, I think people are not ready to make the change yet because they'll find something like this as an obstacle and they'll be like, well, I just didn't track, right? Or I couldn't track macros. I couldn't get into it because I didn't know whether to put it on, this day or that day. And you sit back and you're like, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, but you just want to kind of look at it and be able to explain it, right? So, if you did have and you worked that overnight often or you went back and forth, there might be a day in there where one day is going to be low in calories and protein, but the next day may be high in calories and protein just because of the timing of when that landed, right? But under the circumstance of the question and how mine was, if it's just a one off every now and again, and it's a late night, then I'll just add that. Like I drank a shake when I got home last night and it was about 12:45, right? So by the time I get home, get everything unloaded, take a shower, it's going to be 1:30 before I go to bed. So I just drank a shake when I got in. That went on yesterday's total, not on today's.
Yeah. I like inputting something, not necessarily for tracking purposes, just in day-to-day life. I like being able to do something and justifying why I'm doing it rather than not do it and come up with an excuse on
Yeah.
why I do it.
Yeah. And this, maybe goes on my tough love to the team, that we're 2 or 3 weeks in, but like, I get it the first week, right? And let me take a step back. Here is my dad, my 20 years of coaching, the thing that I tell people: don't make the same mistake twice. Right? So week one, weekend comes around, and you're like, "Hey, Jeremy, I didn't prep for the weekend. I got behind on protein. I didn't have anything. We were out running errands. Cool, I got it. It happens." But when you tell me that week two and week three, that is on you. You did not plan, right? If you're making the same mistake over and over again, that's on you for not changing. Like that's the true definition of insanity. Doing
Right.
the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, right? So you're getting behind on protein on the weekends. Cool. Get up and drink a protein shake to start the day, right? Before you head out and do all of your errands. Okay. Not getting the workouts in, schedule your workouts in. Don't wait for them to happen during the day, right? Especially you got kids, you got jobs. Like, hey, you got to attack that stuff early in the morning or things are going to happen throughout the day.
Yeah.
So the same way with journaling, and what you said really, really came in what I tell people: plan it out, right? Like, if you're really struggling, go ahead and plan the day out. That will help you execute it because you put it down, okay, I've hit my protein, I've hit my calories with this game plan. Let's go make it happen.
That's right. This kind of goes, I think, even when I worked third shift for my summer, so I'm a seasoned professional, out of high school, I worked a third shift security job, but I found myself not like, for some reason, that was my new routine, being up all night. But for some reason, I just wasn't hungry. My brain and stomach weren't
Yeah,
working properly. What does someone do if they're not hungry enough to hit their macros for the day or night or whatever they're kind of doing? What should they do?
gotcha. Um, So if it's a one-off day, I'm not going to be too concerned, right? Like if someone's hitting protein and calories 6 days a week, and one day they're just like, Jeremy, when I do this late night shift or this extra job, I'm not hungry, right? If we're coming close to protein for that day and we're in a caloric deficit and fat loss is the goal, I'm good. Okay. If hunger is a issue, right? Like people don't get hungry, and we see this, right now with a lot of the individuals working with, so with Summit. Anybody that works with Summit that does any of their weight loss medications that decrease the appetite, they work with me on the app too. And a lot of times with that, it is decreasing the appetite, right? So when someone doesn't have an appetite, what I do is I lean a little bit more on protein shakes, right? Now we can call them smoothies, we can call them protein shakes, whatever you want to do, but I'll lean more on that because that's a good way to get the protein in and allow the calories to get down, right? Or the other thing is working with some student athletes now that are just busy and they got classes and then they got their responsibilities at practice and they just don't have a lot of time. They're under eating. So we're doing this smoothie at night where it's kind of like, hey, in your mind, kind of calculate where you're at for the day, and if you're just a little bit off, it's milk, it's 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, scoop of protein, boom. If you missed a meal for the day, then I need an extra scoop of peanut butter in there, right? Just kind of getting sure, make sure that they're getting their calories in because they're wanting to gain muscle and gain some weight, but they're under eating. So that's generally my go-to there is like, hey, let's make a smoothie. Let's be, once again, proactive, honest with yourself. How low are you in calories? How low are you in protein? And what do you need to add in via that smoothie slash shake at the end of the day, or plan it out to put it somewhere in your example in that night shift somewhere.
Um, I kind of already know. I know the answer. You kind of just touched on it, but is it better to stay under your macro targets? Like you're not kind of it's you give someone macros,
Yeah.
and they come to you and they're like, oh, I'm doing good. I'm coming in underneath my target macros. I'm losing weight. I'm doing all this stuff. Like, why is that good or not good?
It depends, right? It depends because ethically, like I can give someone, maybe 1.5 grams of protein per target body weight. So higher than the 1 gram per target body weight I shoot for. If we're going to really push fat loss, I'll go higher on protein. I could go 1.5 grams of protein per target body weight. Your body doesn't need carbohydrates. You don't need them. Your body can make glucose via something called gluconeogenesis, which is making glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, right? Could be a little bit of protein. That's why we increase protein. Could be body fat. Could be fat that you're eating. Okay. Your body needs some fat. So, ladies, I would say, hey, 20 grams, 25 grams of fat at a minimum, plus 6 grams of omega 3 fatty acids. Guys, 30 grams of fat, 6 grams of omega 3 fatty acids. I know I'm providing enough essential amino acids, or sorry, essential fatty acids to that person. I'm providing enough essential amino acids via the protein we talked about. No such thing as a carbohydrate essential. So carbs can be as low as they want to. Generally, I'll say, hey, keep your veggies in because that's getting your fiber in. And that's the lowest someone could go, right? So if you say that's the lowest calories you can go, you're going to produce the best fat loss because those are the lowest calories. However, what is their energy going to feel like? Are they going to be able to work out hard? Are they going to be able to push that weight? Right? Those are the factors that come into play when you say, well, let's drop the calories way down. Okay. So that what I generally do is I will slowly titrate down someone's carbs and fats throughout their journey because this is, I don't have research on this. This is Jeremy's opinion, but I think the more and the longer that I have someone in a caloric deficit, especially when they have body fat to lose, their body gets better at using their stored body fat. So once someone is 2, 3 months into their journey and they've been losing body fat over 2 or 3 months, I can lower carbs and fats pretty aggressive and they don't get hungry and their energy is fine because the body for 2 or 3 months has been using stored energy, the body fat. So then you got this reserves, right? That's allowing you to be able to fuel yourself off that. So, that's where, once again, like we don't want people to completely lower carbs and fats out of the gate because your hunger, your energy, all that goes into play. Okay. But as a rule of thumb, if fat loss is the goal, you hit your protein goal and you can be short on your carbs and fats because if you're short on your carbs and fats, the body just uses body fat for fuel.
Perfect.
Flip side, if you're trying to gain, you got to hit your calories, right? You got to hit your protein and you got to hit your calories because you got to get that in there from that side. So I don't want to leave our people that are trying to gain some muscle tissue out of that conversation.
Right. Yeah, the gentleman that wears all black from Team Alpha Weekend, if you're listening, there's your motivation to eat more. Um, Last question. How important, and we have, I mean, I think we have probably a minimum of 3 episodes on this, maybe five. How important is exercise when tracking macros for fat loss?
Say it again.
How important is exercise, or we can say resistance training or exercise, whatever you prefer to go with, when tracking macros for fat loss?
Gotcha.
I know we have several episodes out there in the wild now, probably 3 to 5
Yeah.
episodes of this, but how important is exercise or resistance training when tracking macros for fat loss?
Yeah, I mean, I think nutrition is the number one thing. Okay. I do. I think nutrition is number one thing. And I think movement is very important. And that's a very broad statement. Okay. I had a lady come back, had been struggling to lose a little bit of weight, went to overseas. I think it was France, somewhere like that. She's like, Jeremy, like, we're going to eat what they give us, but she averaged 20,000 steps a day and did body weight movements every other day. She's like, Jeremy, I ate foods I've never ate in a while, like the breads and stuff like that. She lost weight because of the movement. That's what I told her. I was like, guys, and I think this for myself, walking an hour a day, you get 3 miles in. That's 300 additional calories. So someone walking 20,000 steps a day, that's 6 miles a day. That's an extra 600, probably 800 calories, depending on the size of the individual. You burn an extra 600, 800 calories a day in and day out. That's a big difference versus just sitting at your desk for 8 hours, going to the gym and getting one workout in a day. Right. Like, so I think it is a combination. I always say it's a combination, but nutrition and then resistance training and walking are your two biggest things, right? I feel like that is, from that standpoint. But you can drop body fat 100% with your nutrition. 100% you can drop it with nutrition. You don't have to exercise a lot. And then a lot of endurance athletes I work with that have been on their fat loss journey talk about this. Like it's a struggle to drop body fat when you're training a lot because the body is telling you eat more, fuel more, right? So I would argue it's nutrition, first, when we talking about losing body fat composition, and then shaping that, of course, the resistance training. And I listen, I'll preach it to the end of my career. I love the daily walking, 60 minutes a day on purpose. We need to make it happen.
Cool. All right, we have what, like 5-ish weeks left of this challenge.
Yep.
What's your kind of key messages for tracking macros between now and the finish?
Yeah, so I think for most people, hey, finish strong, right? Protein and calories. There'll be some people that we drop those. Don't stress about messing up, right? Because it is an average of a week, and I'll tell people this all the time. That, like, you can undo the weekend, by over consuming way on the weekend, right? So if you're, negative 500 calories Monday through Friday, so 5 times 5, it's negative 2,500 calories. You could overeat by 1,200 calories on Saturday and Sunday and undo that. But also, if you when we say overeat, and that's the thing people have to understand. If you're shooting for 2,000 calories and 2,000 calories has you in a deficit of 500 calories, well, that means 2,500 would be even. So on the weekend, you would have to eat 3,000 to be up 500.
Mhm.
So I think what happens is people, they'll consume 2,500 on the weekend. They're like, oh, I messed up. I was over my calories, and they give up. No, you actually maintained.
Yeah.
Right? So look at it over the average of the week. That would be the other thing that I put out there. Because sometimes when I go into maintenance with people, I don't just increase calories every single day. Sometimes I just increase it on the weekends. Sometimes, and I've been doing this a lot lately, just increasing it on their leg day. So I'll work in calories up on their leg day, give them a little bit more fuel. So psychologically, they can see that, hey, when I got more fuel on this one day, I feel better. I'm not gaining weight. So those are some things that we kind of start doing, as we work forward. But biggest piece of information or not information. I'm sorry, information. Yeah, information in the sense of like what I want people to do. Like, don't give up. That's the biggest thing. And no matter whether we're talking about the challenge or we're talking about anything, is like, don't give up. So many people give up and go into what we call, just normal, living this normal life. And when we say normal, guys, that's not a good thing because our averages have went down, right? Whether we're talking about healthy body fat, whether we're talking about, healthy financial, not being in a good debt, right? Because I hate to say just debt, because I understand there could be some good debt. Like, hey, you got a house, right? Everything else is paid off. Like, I don't consider that bad debt,
Right.
so, but don't be average. Put the effort in, finish strong this year, in general, finish the challenge strong, finish 2004 or 2024 strong, and keep rocking and rolling.
Perfect.
Awesome, guys. Appreciate you. Once again, if you have not tried the recovery cream, give it a shot. I think you guys will be impressed on it. And it's something I think everybody should have a bottle of at home and use it as needed anytime an injury or joint pain comes up. So appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you.